Hi everybody! Skidboot and I, we're going on a big adventure. In a week we're flying from Canada to Europe. It will be Skid's first ever flight. Well, actually it's 3 flights each way. Our first flight is about an hour and a half from Prince George, British Columbia to Vancouver, British Columbia with Air Canada. And then we'll have about a 4.5 hour layover in Vancouver, which will give us plenty of time to go potty, or for Skid to go potty in the pet relief area. And then our next flight is with Lufthansa to Frankfurt, and that's almost a 10-hour flight. It will be overnight, like leaving at 4 in the afternoon. In Frankfurt, Germany, we have a 2-hour layover, which should give us enough time to go through immigration. And from there we have another 50-minute flight with Lufthansa from Frankfurt, Germany to Zurich, Switzerland. In Switzerland, we will have to go through customs, and they'll have to check Skid's health papers, sign them, stamp them, authorize them, and also check his microchip. Right, buddy? My mom will meet us at the airport, and together we'll take the train to where she lives, which is about a 45-minute train ride. All in all, it's a very long trip, about 22 hours from door to door, like from my friend's place in Prince George to my mom's place. I decided to leave the day before because I live 2.5 hours from the airport, and I just wanted to be sure we get there in time in case of any issues with the truck or whatnot, or something happening on the road, there's an accident. So we're leaving the day before and stay at my friend's place overnight, and then we can be at the airport early. It will be stressful, but I did as much as possible to prepare Skid for the trip and the flights. And as mentioned before, our international flight is in the late afternoon, so he'll most likely be sleeping once we're up in the air, and I'm sure so will I. Skid can easily hold his potty for 13 hours, but he's also trained to relieve himself on potty pads on command. I will not feed him that morning, but I will use treats as needed, and I won't give him too much water, but it's a long trip, so he will get some, and I might also feed him, or not feed him, but let him lick ice cubes on the flight so he doesn't get too dehydrated. So I'm gonna mention some of the things, or most of the things we did to prepare for our big trip. We did lots of rides in various vehicles, like in cars and trucks, on four-wheelers, quads, golf carts, on various terrain, including very bumpy terrain, especially with the quad and truck. We also went on train rides and bus rides. I made sure he's used to the sight and sound of golf carts, as we'll most likely come across those at the airport, as those are used to help people get around that need assistance. We practiced riding in elevators, on escalators. We didn't get to practice moving sidewalks because there isn't any around, but they're similar to escalators. Are you hot, buddy? If you are planning on letting your dog ride on escalators and moving sidewalks, I highly recommend putting shoes on your dog, just so his claws and the hair on his paws doesn't get caught anywhere, because that could be super painful and it's very dangerous. We also went to the airport in Prince George, where we'll be flying off several times to do some training. We hung out at the baggage claim area so Skid could get used to the carousel and people pulling suitcases around. We hung out in front of the secure area, the security checkpoint, and one of the officers actually invited us to come in and let us practice in that area. The only thing we weren't allowed to do was go through the actual walk-through metal detector. But I was able to put stuff in the trays and rattle them around so he could get used to the sound of it, and she would use her handheld scanner and scan both me and then Skid, just so he could get used to the sound of that. And so yeah, that was a good experience, just doing stuff at the actual airport, and he did quite well. We have a video on that on YouTube. We had previously also practiced being scanned by a handheld scanner at the local police station with one of the RCMP officers. I also made sure that Skid got to meet lots of different people in different uniforms, like police officers, firefighters, security guards, security officers, just things like that, so he has no fear of people in uniform. Another thing we did is exposure to loud machinery, vehicles, equipment. The fire department is great for that. Farms with big machines, tractors, or the industrial vehicles as well, because chances are he'll run into something like that at an airport or on the tarmac. Because our first flight, we actually have to walk across the tarmac to get to the plane. There's no gangway. It's also a good idea to teach your service dog to go potty, not just on command, but on a potty pad, because there's not always a pet relief area, or they are so disgusting that the dog doesn't want to use them. In Europe, for example, the airports do not have pet relief areas inside the terminal. You'd have to leave the secure area to use them. So if you don't want to do that, and sometimes you don't have the time for that, or most of the time you won't, you just have to go to a washroom, like a handicapped washroom or a family washroom, and let him relieve himself on a potty pad. Practice long down stays in various environments, including busy environments like malls. We went to the fire department to practice that as well, because he's going to need them at the airport. Teach and practice a good tuck. Laundry baskets are great for that. Skid loves to sleep on chairs at home, so he definitely has a good tuck, but of course in public he's not going to be allowed to do that. So please don't allow your dog to be on seats, whether it be at the airport or on airplanes. It's bad etiquette. Also practice downstays and tucks under tables and chairs in restaurants. Make sure your service dog has a solid sit, stay, and recall for when you're going through security. Also make sure your dog is comfortable being touched by strangers, because he may be patted down by a security officer, and you'll also get people petting your dog even though you don't want that, but it does happen, so make sure your dog is not reactive to that. I also played tons of YouTube videos with various sounds, from jet engines, turbo engines starting up, planes taking off, PA announcements, background sounds from busy airports, baggage claim areas, security check stop, and all that, just so he could get used to all these sounds and isn't worried when it actually happens in real life. So when you do that, just start at a low volume and then gradually increase the loudness of the video. I would play it in the end over a speaker, and we would even do some walk exercises and sit stays and recalls, and just pretend we're in that actual environment. YouTube has a ton of stuff. Another thing you want to do is getting your service dog used to glass buildings and or glass elevators, because again you might encounter that at an airport. So here's some additional tips that I have for flying. Make sure your dog is well exercised before the flight. Definitely withhold food a few hours before the flight, and I wouldn't give your dog too much water either. On longer flights, I talked to my vet about it, and she doesn't think it's an issue giving him some water or ice cubes to chew on. She's also going to give me something to prevent stomach upsets, just in case, when there's stress or there's turbulence on a flight. So what I do, I bring an empty water bottle for him that I can fill out after I go through security, and I have a collapsible water bowl that I can use to give him water as I see needed. I'm also bringing high value treats, some that he really likes, so make sure your dog is used to those treats. You don't want to switch treats just before a trip or on a trip, because it could cause stomach upsets. You also want to bring some dog food, dry kibble, depending on the length of the trip. The amounts vary. I'm going to bring probably 2 days worth of dog food, just in case there's some delays, a cancellation, we get stuck somewhere. I don't want to be scrambling to find dog food at an airport. And of course, a feed bowl. I use the collapsible ones. I'm gonna bring his travel mat to put on the airplane floor, because the floor gets pretty cold once the airplane is up in the air, and it's usually also pretty dirty, and just for his general comfort, so especially on these long flights, that he can lay comfortably and sleep. You may also want to put a onesie on your dog, just to give him some extra warmth and keep him clean, but also as courtesy to the other passengers, especially if your dog sheds a lot. It prevents hair from being all over the place. Another thing you could do is bring a lint roller, so you can, especially if your dog sheds a lot, so you can clean up some dog hair that your dog leaves behind, including on your own clothes. I'm gonna bring Skid's favorite toy. Make sure it's a silent squeaker if it has one, or otherwise a non-squeaky toy. You may also want to bring a chew stick. Just don't use bully sticks, they're pretty smelly and it's not very nice towards the other passengers. I'm also going to bring paper towels, wipes, like disinfectant wipes and disposable gloves in a Ziploc bag just in case he has an accident. I'm not expecting that, but I'd rather be prepared than not. And of course I'm going to bring potty pads if there is no pet relief area or he needs to go on the 10-hour flight, which I doubt because he can hold it for 13 hours overnight easily. We've practiced that at home, so I don't expect an issue, but like I said, I'd rather be prepared than scramble and try to find something to clean up. You may also want to give your dog some calming treats or talk to your vet about some calming medication. Just please do not give him any sedatives because I think it lowers their heart rate and that can cause issues in high altitude. Don't forget to bring your original health papers and rabies certificates, and that's even more important if you're flying internationally. It's a good idea to have extra copies on you as well as copies on, like digital copies on your phone. Another thing you may want to bring, or I highly recommend you bring, is an extra leash and an extra collar because things can break and you don't want to be without the collar and or leash. Some airlines require you to muzzle your dog. Some will only ask that if your dog causes an issue. So it's a good idea to not only bring one, but also make sure your dog is muzzle trained. If you're traveling internationally, check with customs in that country about dog food. What you're able to bring with you. There might be a limit on quantity. They may have certain requirements on how it needs to be labeled, or if it needs to be in its original bag. I checked with Switzerland and it's quite a high amount per day that I can bring for him, but they do prefer it in its original package or bag. But since I can't bring an 18 kg bag of dog food with me, I asked them if I could put it in Ziploc bags, and they said, yeah, just get some labels from the manufacturer and tape them on it. So that's what I did. I just contacted the manufacturer and then filled it up in a couple of Ziploc bags. Another thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to ask for pre-boarding, which gives me some extra time to get him settled, get myself settled, and yeah, I don't have to walk through rows of passengers already seated. A lot of handlers ask for bulkhead. I was actually assigned bulkhead by Lufthansa on the international flight, but I had them change it to a row just a few rows back because I'd rather have a seat in front of me. It makes me feel more comfortable, and I think Skid, he's only 40 some pounds, so I think he'll be more comfortable too, just kind of tucked into the corner against, you know, where the window is, kind of out of sight. That's all I can think of right now. I may have forgot something. If you can think of anything else, please let me know in the comments. I'll be making an extra video or a separate video on what I'll pack for our trip. Flying is stressful at the best of times, but with the proper preparation, everything should go a lot smoother. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions or any things I should add, and hope to see you in the next video.